Let's move forward. Let's move on to Patrick Haan from GasBuddy, who joins us now on Live Impact News, one of our regular guests here on the program. And Patrick, it's good to see you. And we come together with big news when it comes to the geopolitics that have impacted the energy industry. What kind of effect is the most optimistic looking extension of a ceasefire in a permanent way going to bring to the gas industry based on what you can tell?
At least, where things stand now, we have a deal. If the deal doesn't unravel, oil prices have dropped yesterday and Monday, although they are up today on some new escalations. As President Trump has said, if Iran doesn't move ahead with this, we could resume and return to escalation. So that is a little bit of a risk. But for now, Monday and Tuesday's big drop in oil could continue to put downward pressure on gas prices in Virginia and across the country. Gas prices in Virginia already down to 3.74 a gallon here at this moment, down about 58 cents a gallon from a month ago. And prices could fall another 10 to 25 cents a gallon over the next few weeks if this deal to reopen the strait does materialize. And that's kind of the biggest question now. The map over my shoulder looking at tanker traffic through the strait, it hasn't reopened yet. So oil markets are actually declining based on this happening this weekend, but knowing that this deal has not been signed yet. So there is an element of risk here that if the strait doesn't reopen, oil prices could go right back up and gas prices along with it. And some concerning metrics on the other side of the equation. If this deal doesn't happen, well, earlier this week, the U.S. Strategic Reserve fell to its lowest level since 1983, and new government out just an hour ago from the Energy Information Administration showing that oil inventories at the major delivery point in Cushing, Oklahoma, have fallen to their lowest level since October of 2014. So we're kind of in do or die mode here. If this deal happens, good news. If it doesn't, we're going to be in a bit of a pickle.
And we've seen a lot of we've really seen this pattern established of public-facing optimism about negotiations, particularly from President Trump via his social media accounts, and then those negotiations fall apart, and back and forth we go. In this particular instance, there at the very least has been word from Iranian leaders that there is in fact an agreement in place, word from President Trump that there was a digital signature on this agreement. We have the G7 summit happening now. Other leaders have remarked on this agreement. Have all of those things led to a more concrete feeling about this particular instance of what appears to be successful negotiations? And is that reflected? Has the drop we've seen in those oil prices been more drastic than maybe in some of those other examples of public optimism?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, the optimism has been building for weeks now. President Trump's talked about this deal, a deal, a deal. He's probably said it hundreds of times over the last few weeks. And that's part of the reason why oil prices and gas prices have declined for 5 straight weeks because Trump flipped the script. Instead of talking about escalations, you'll remember back to a post he made on True Social on Easter Sunday, the post that I didn't think was possible, talking about that, open the strait, or we're going to bomb the heck out of you. That's me paraphrasing. And then within the weeks following, Trump did an about face. He started talking about a deal and telling Israel to knock it off with new attacks. So the tone shifted. That helped push oil prices lower. But now Trump also flipping the script back again. If the deal isn't good enough, a deal I think that he was heavily involved in, if it's not good enough, he promised this morning that the U.S. could go back and start attacking and dropping more bombs on Iran. So a lot of mixed signals here, which create a lot of uncertainty. If this deal doesn't happen, oil prices are probably going to go right back up. So, right now is very much a do or die situation for what you and I pay at the pump. If the deal does happen and if the strait does reopen, if we see ships start going through on the map behind me, that will help push gas prices lower. If it doesn't happen and we do start to see more escalations, well, gas prices probably in Virginia will go right back above the $4 gallon mark, and they could go still to record setting prices if this continues for another few weeks. So, which of those we'll get? I certainly do not know that.
And you talked about concerning metrics and how we've reached some of our lowest numbers since 1983 in one instance, since 2014 in another instance. When it comes to those concerning metrics and what they represent, and that sort of do or die moment, this critical inflection point that we're in, if we pass through that moment and beyond that inflection point without the improvement that we're hoping for, what happens? What's on the other side of that do or die moment?
Well, oil company executives have been warning the Trump administration rather openly. Chevron's CEO saying 100 or 200, $150 oil is still possible. So, and that's what's happening. And the backdrop of all of this is if this deal doesn't materialize, I mean, oil inventories are still declining. Oil inventories globally have declined at some of the fastest paces that we've seen in history. So, if this deal doesn't happen tomorrow, inventories are going to continue dropping. And I would probably say by July or August, certainly by August, these executives and what they've been saying is going to come to roost. So, that is why this deal is imperative that something reopen the strait here very soon, because in the backdrop of things, every day the strait remains closed is a day that global oil inventories continue declining. And you're hearing a lot of words like operational minimums, tank bottoms, because these things over the last 110 days, inventories have continued to decline. So it's a very much do or die moment here over the next, week or two if this deal doesn't materialize. We're going to be faced with those metrics that you mentioned, the SPR at its lowest level since 1983, Cushing, Oklahoma, which is the delivery point for the NYMEX oil contract at its lowest since 2014, and global oil inventories declining. And the market can only ignore that for so long. If there's no good news soon, the market probably will watch reality set in, and that reality is fairly grim.
And going back on, we have that grim reality that is a possibility in the worst case scenario. Looking back at that best case scenario where there is a concrete agreement put in place, the strait reopens, and that monitor behind you starts to see some more activity. Is this a situation where things will go, retreat to a relative normal that we're used to? Or is there anything about this industry that you think has permanently changed going forward, prices or otherwise?
Well, certainly, the Strait of Hormuz and Middle Eastern oil producers are going to approach this far differently. They've learned lessons. They're probably going to build pipelines to go around the strait. In the interim, um, y- you know, I had the point on the tip of my tongue here that you mentioned, and I'm trying to remember it now. But um, where prices go could be lower. We could go 10 or 20 cents a gallon lower if all of this does happen. But to your point, and that's now I remember it, back to pre-war levels, Virginia prices are 64 cents a gallon higher than last year. It's going to take 6, 12, or even 18 months for global inventories to start refilling to get back to their pre-war levels. So, even if there is good news that gas prices may continue dropping, we're down 58 cents from a month ago in Virginia, but we're still 64 cents above last year. It's going to take a very long amount of time for us to get back down to, say, below $3 prices. The prices that we saw in January and February that everyone was enamored with, those could take beyond a year to come back. We may, the new norm might be 350 a gallon for most of the summer. Even if things go swimmingly, we may not see any sub $3 prices until extremely late this year or early next year.
And when we look at sort of without the external factors that have created this crisis, yearly there are seasonal shifts that occur. Typically during the summer travel season, there will be an uptick in gas prices that just comes along with those seasonal changes, both in terms of increased demand and some of the other factors that impact sort of oil refinery schedules. With the current energy crisis sort of combining with that summer travel season, what kind of concoction is that? Are we looking at a situation where maybe those summer travel gas prices will actually go down more than they usually would because people are hesitant to travel? I'm kind of meandering around now, but in terms of how the summer travel is going to impact everything that we're talking about here, what do you expect? What do you see?
Well, conventional wisdom is that gasoline demand and prices peak in the midsummer. That's actually not quite the case. Gas prices normally peak in April or May and they decline through the summer. The reason for that is a reminder we got from that government data I was referring to that was released this morning. Refineries are cranking up output. They are almost at 97% of capacity. That means if a hurricane comes and shuts down refineries, it's not going to be a good outcome. That means that there's actually so much gasoline being produced right now. That's part of the reason why prices have moderated. And that happens normally in summer. Gas prices usually peak in late April or early May because of a combination of refinery maintenance, the change to summer gasoline, and rising demand. Now, two of those things are behind us. The change to summer gasoline is over, and refinery maintenance is over. The only factor we have left is demand. But the two factors being behind us is actually the better part of the equation that does push prices down. So normally, if none of this stuff with the strait is happening, gas prices would already be slowly declining over the course of the summer. Of course, hurricane season is a wild card. We're seeing that play out this year as well. Of course, we've got a lot more noise. If the strait remains closed, prices could go right back up. So um, my whole world and what motorists are going to pay the rest of the summer has less to do with the seasonality and much more to do with whatever does develop with the US and Iran and whether or not the strait reopens or not.
And we'll be keeping a sharp eye on it as always. Patrick DeHaan, anything else you want to add while we have you?
No, hoping for the best. Love chatting with you, but I'd love for the strait to be reopened and for gas prices to go back down and, to not have to talk about this so often.
Absolutely. We enjoy chatting with you as well. Hopefully, we get even more good news on Friday. I'm sure we'll catch up again before long, and maybe the topic will change at some point. But for now, we continue to monitor the situation in Iran. Thank you, Patrick DeHaan from GasBuddy. We
Thank
appreciate you
you.
as always.